Hi everyone, welcome back to Charley's Journey. If you are new here, I'm Charley and I make videos on my healing journey from being a Jehovah's Witness for nearly 30 years. And I talk about the things that have helped me to get through that, how I've been rebuilding my life since then. And yeah, if any of that is of interest to you, then please go ahead and subscribe. To all my current subscribers, thank you for your support and your love as always. Let's get straight into it. I will be looking down because I have notes. Today's topic, I thought we'd talk about the unique life of a JW, just for anybody who may not be aware. And the reason I thought about this subject is because I saw a couple of social media TikTok videos that inspired me to want to talk about this. In future videos, I'll be discussing the residual effects of being part of the Jehovah's Witness organisation, the indoctrination I received, and basically stuff that I'm going to have to probably spend years undoing, unlearning, etc. But in order for you to kind of get an idea of why that is even necessary or what that entails, I thought I'd just briefly as I can in this video talk about why JW life is unique. So everything I'm going to mention, I won't be going into any kind of detail with it for the obvious reasons. I don't have eternity to talk about it. I don't have all day and all night to talk about the ins and outs, so I'll just be briefly going over it. But I probably will make, if I need to, in the future videos, maybe discussing certain aspects in a bit more detail. Definitely when I talk about my indoctrination series, I keep thinking of it as a series because it would probably be a series of videos talking about what I've had to do and what I probably will still continue having to do to undo those indoctrination effects, and just having that as my life for nearly 30 years. So let's get straight into it. I'll start off by saying all of the things that I'm going to mention apply solely to baptized Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying that people who aren't baptized won't still be held to some kind of standard regarding these things, because they still will, but the consequences of them not abiding by some of these things that I'm mentioning, there's hardly, if any, consequences. And also, in order to be an exemplary, a good Jehovah's Witness, these are the things that you would be doing. So I thought I'd have to just preface what I'm going to say with that, because that's super important. I got baptized at 16, and even before then, my mum was baptized when I was 4 or 5. So this is the way we lived our life. This was the blueprint for my entire life growing up. So yeah, straight into it. Weekly meetings. Yeah. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses call their gatherings that they have each week as meetings, and they meet in the Kingdom Hall. It used to be 3 times a week when I was little, and now it's down to twice a week. So one meeting during the week, and one on the weekend. Sunday's always the weekend one, and yeah, one during the week would be in attendance at all the meetings. They're not optional, they're not negotiable. You are at all your meetings, you don't miss it, unless there are some extremely extenuating circumstances that it's just out of your control. But if you're sick, tired, whatever, you're at the meetings, no exceptions. Next, preaching. Jehovah's Witnesses are infamous, famous, whatever, very well known for their on your door, or coming to your place of work, or talking to you at work, or during the lockdown period that we had, they were writing letters to people because they weren't able to actually get out, obviously, so they wrote letters to people instead. Any way that they can preach, they come up to you in the street. They even have carts now that display their publications, and people are allowed to go up and, you know, take if they want to and have a chat or whatever. But that is fundamental to you being a good Jehovah's Witness, is you will be preaching, going out, knocking on doors, or whatever avenue of different forms of preaching that they have. You will be participating in it regularly, and when you don't, there's consequences. Again, we'll talk about that in later videos, but to be a good Jehovah's Witness, you will be out on that preaching assignment no matter what. So for me, growing up, every Saturday without fail, when I was a kid, I would be up early, ready to go, and then I sort of adjusted my schedule to fit as I got older and I had my own independence. But I still, every Saturday was non-negotiable. Sometimes it was Sunday as well, after the meeting or before, depending what your meeting time was. You'd also do maybe an hour of preaching after that, or if you had a Bible study, you studied the Bible with somebody, you might try and fit that in over those 2 days. But yeah, non-negotiable, good Christian, do your preaching. Along with that, regular Bible study. You are not any kind of good Jehovah's Witness if you do not study that Bible. And I mean on your own, like in your own free time, reading it on a daily basis. If you can, you're encouraged to read it every single day. You're encouraged to read it every single day. It doesn't have to be large passages, I'll give them that. They do say to you, even if you can read just a few verses or a chapter a day, that is what you do. You will not be a good Jehovah's Witness if you do not read your Bible regularly, preferably daily. Referring back to the meetings, you would need to not only attend your week meeting, they call it midweek, your midweek meeting and your Sunday meeting. You would have to prepare for those meetings. And what I mean by that is, Jehovah's Witnesses don't just have an elder, an overseer of the congregation, get up and on the podium and just, you know, read stuff from the Bible. They've got their own publications that they expect you to read and study. So for instance, the Watchtower is one of them, and they've got various other publications that you would study during the week, things to help you with the preaching work and things like that. Lots of just different things based around the Bible but produced by Jehovah's Witnesses. So they expect you to study that material, as in annotate. So make notes on what you have learned, underline with a pen or a marker any points that, because they have questions in there. So it's a bit like a reading comprehension thing, where, you know, you've got passages that you read and then it will ask you questions about those passages. It's very similar to that. So you would have to read through those, whatever the assigned material is, annotate it, underline it, annotate it, make notes, and you would come prepared to basically participate in those meetings. If you haven't studied it, then to go there and try and pay attention for 2 hours to what they're talking about is yeah, that would be hard. So in a way, it was kind of good to prepare, but it was a lot sometimes to try and fit that into your schedule, especially as I got older, trying to fit studying, doing my Bible reading, all the rest of it into my schedule, because there's different parts to the meeting and each part has books or brochures that you have to, that, you know, pertain to that particular part that you need to study for. And along with that, a good Christian would put their hand up to answer those questions that are contained in the publications that you have studied. So various elders, or what they're also called ministerial servants, which are a step down from an elder, would get up and ask certain questions and leave it open to the audience to answer those questions. So if you're a good Christian, if you're a good Jehovah's Witness, you will put your hand up and at least offer one comment throughout that 2-hour period, at least one. If you can do more, brilliant. Also, signing up to their theocratic ministry school. It's not a school as we think of it, but it is kind of a school. There's not much in the way of responsibility given to women at all, if any, but in terms of the actual meetings, you might be, if you've joined this theocratic ministry school, you would be called upon to participate in a demonstration. You're given a time to prepare for it, so it's not like on the day you're like, oh, can you come up and demonstrate? You would have been given time to prepare for it. In order to prepare you to go out there, you'll have a demonstration of how to give somebody the watchtower, that current watchtower for that month or that awake, or how to share a scripture with somebody on the door. You would first demonstrate that at the meeting, and I was involved in that from the time I was about 5. I was on that school. Again, good Christian would do that, yeah? You'd be very fully involved in the meetings. Also, to be a good Jehovah's Witness Christian, you would need to follow direction, be a really good sheep, and that's actually what the terminology they use, being a good sheep or a faithful slave. It essentially means just following and doing what you're told. Those that are in charge of the Jehovah's Witness organisation, called the governing body, filter down all of their instruction to the elders in each congregation, and because the governing body are seen as being used by Jehovah God to distribute spiritual information, they are highly respected and to be obeyed. That's it. And if you're an individual who has an issue with following direction, if you're an individual who has a problem being obedient, then you're going to be seen as a problem. The more you can say yes, how high do I jump, where do I jump, and for how long, the more you're that type of a person, again, the more you're seen as a good Christian, because you're seen as somebody who is submitting to Jehovah. They equate your level of obedience to the governing body, to the elders, to anybody in authority. They equate that with you being obedient to Jehovah God and to Jesus Christ. So again, you don't question things. You follow the direction, you say yes, even if it's hard, doesn't matter. They expect you to follow. You would only associate with other Jehovah's Witnesses. I had one friend when I was in secondary school who really, I still get on with her to this day. We don't see each other at all anymore because of our lives. We're grown-ups obviously now, we've got our own families, and I've moved out of the area. But when I met her when I was in year 8 of secondary school, and we remained friends beyond, as I said, from year 8 beyond. But I wouldn't be able to, even though I did a couple of times, go to her house, but that would have been frowned upon. I would not. You're encouraged to have minimal contact with anybody that is not a Jehovah's Witness. You know, you can have your highs, your buys, your pleasantries, but you don't hang out with them. You wouldn't go and spend time at their house, or any kind of close association or friendship with anybody that's not a Jehovah's Witness is frowned upon, is discouraged, is outright like just a no. You have only JW friends, and that includes your family. Any family members that are not Jehovah's Witnesses, you're encouraged to not have association with them as well. Again, don't get me wrong, that they won't say to you, you know, abandon your family, but they will say to you that once you become a dedicated witness, You're not supposed to be spending vast amount of time with your family who are not, unless you are preaching to them. But if you're not preaching to them, what do you have in common with them now? And that's what they would say. That leads to nicely onto the next point. No celebrations or popular celebrations that everybody celebrates, even other Christian religions. Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate birthdays, Christmas, Easter, you know, anything like that you can think of. Stop celebrating my birthday from 3 onwards. I never celebrated a birthday until I left. Well, you know, didn't get involved in any of the Christmas stuff that would happen at school, or when I became an adult in the workplace. I wouldn't go to any of the Christmas parties, or I wouldn't sign anyone's birthday card. I wouldn't put any money in, like, you know, just all of that. Just non-participation in anything of that kind. Apologies, I've missed one that I should have said a bit earlier. It was to do with the preaching and stuff like that. A good Jehovah's Witness will not stop at just preaching on a Saturday or sometimes during the week. They would sign up for more responsibility. They would reach out, as they call it, reach out for more responsibility. As a woman, you would apply for full-time service, which means that you would sign up to do a certain amount of hours every month as a pioneer, they call them. I have heard that the hours have changed. I did mention this in a previous video, but the hours have changed. When I was growing up, it was 100 and something hours for a special, I think maybe 120 hours for a special preacher, let's call it. For a full-time pioneer or preacher, it was 90 hours. For an auxiliary, which is basically a part-time preacher, it was, what did I say, 70 hours. And they gradually, as time went on, did adjust those hours, because, is that not crazy? On top of your job, your actual career, or, you know, whatever job you have, you're also trying to fit in the special pioneers, the special full-time ones don't work actually, but the normal full-time ones, they still work. Crazy. But yeah, but everybody who is dedicated and baptized would be expected to do more. You wouldn't be expected to just sit there and get by with doing the bare minimum, or if you're in a situation that they deem to be favourable for you to do more, they'll be like, well, why are you not doing more? You've got no kids, you're single, why are you not pioneering? Yeah, we did talk briefly about discipline. I have spoken about this in my why I left the Jehovah's Witnesses story, but discipline and reproof is a definite part of a dedicated Jehovah's Witnesses life. When you sin or do things that are wrong according to JW standards and their doctrine, their teachings, their interpretation of the Bible, when you do things wrong, you are disciplined. There are consequences. And the severity of those consequences depends on the severity of what you've done. So leading all the way from a chat with you and an elder or two, where they will share a scripture with you over trying to encourage you to stop doing that sinful thing that you've done, or maybe try not to do that thing again. They might just share a couple of scriptures that are designed to help you or encourage you with that, all the way up to getting kicked out, getting shunned. Kicked out, essentially, they call it disfellowshipping, but it's basically being shunned. If they feel that you're not sorry enough for the things you've done, you're gone. So discipline and reproof is a very big part of that as well. These last two are more to do with, you know, your personal life, which all of this kind of pertains to. But anyway, career and education. You, as a good JW, would not pursue higher education. You wouldn't go to uni. You wouldn't you wouldn't apply to go to uni. And when you are still at school, you would not involve yourself unnecessarily in like extracurricular activities, whether it be sports or even academic stuff. They just discourage you from being too overly involved in your education. And then when you have left your education and you're looking to get a job, a good Jehovah's Witness would choose a menial, humble, I'm trying to be careful with what I'm saying, but menial, humble type of a job. You would not try to pursue a really massive career that would pay you loads of money, or that would involve a lot of your time and take you away from all the other things I've mentioned, the meetings, the preaching, the studying, all the rest of it. They would encourage you to, I'm trying to think of examples of JW jobs, typical ones: window cleaners, shop workers, care workers, low-level office workers. So any kind of position that allows you to work either flexibly or part-time. They will always encourage you to try and get a part-time job. Your full-time focus or your full-time job will be the preaching. So of course there would be people that would pursue really good careers and did pursue it, did go to uni, did start earning lots of money, but they were not seen as exemplary Christians. They were not seen as the example of what you do. So yeah, you go for a modest, humble, hopefully part-time type of a job. When it comes to relationships, like I said, you would have friendships with only Jehovah's Witnesses if possible. You would marry only a Jehovah's Witness. And there's principles and guidance around that. They call it courting. When you're courting somebody who's a fellow Jehovah's Witness, you have to have chaperones. You wouldn't ever go anywhere, just the two of you, unless it was in a public place. So you can go on a date, obviously, in a public place, but you would more than likely be encouraged to take a chaperone with you, just in case you need to get in the car and you'll be alone and drive to wherever you need to go, or be driven home from wherever you've been. It'd be good to have a chaperone in there with you in case there's any temptation of anything. Yeah, you wouldn't like chill at home with somebody you're courting, or chill at your parents' house if they were not there and you're a younger person, because a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses get married young. You'd have a chaperone. A lot of them get married very quickly as well for that very reason, because no sex outside of marriage, no anything outside of marriage. I think when you're engaged, it wouldn't be seen as too bad if you were to kiss the person. Yeah, I don't think it's seen as too bad if you kiss the person whilst you're engaged, but anything else prior to that is a no. So a lot of people do get married very young. We had people when I was little getting married from the age of 16. Average age in one of the congregations I grew up in was 16 to 20, 20 being the oldest. And if you got to your 20s and you weren't married, if you got to 20 or your early 20s and were not married yet, it was like, what is wrong with you? Like, what's going on? You wouldn't court someone for a vast amount of time. You wouldn't be engaged for a long time. Like all of those things, you would be most likely pulled up by the elders to be like, what's going on here? Why have you two not made that commitment to each other yet? It's been 6 months, it's been 3 months, that kind of thing. Also, once you do get married, there's certain principles again and teachings that JWs have, that even once you are married, there's certain things that you wouldn't get involved in with your husband or your wife. You know what I mean? When you're having intimate time, there's certain things that they would expect you to refrain from and things like that. So these are just some of the things I could remember. There's probably more that there may be more I've left out, but as you can see, it's kind of all encompassing to do with your life, any decisions that you make. It's your whole life. It's just your whole life for you to be seen as good in God's eyes, which, you know, when you really take it seriously, that's something you want. You want to be seen as good and righteous and sinless, obedient, all these different things in God's eyes. So you do those things, you do it, and you try your best to live by it. So that's what I did for, like I said, nearly 30 years. I did not get it right. Many times I didn't, which is why, as I said, I had to leave in the end because it was just too much for me. But in future videos, I will, like I said, talk about how the indoctrination and how this way of life has affected me and the things I've had to unlearn, what the residual effects have been on me, what I've had to stop doing, and how I've had to adjust my thinking in so many areas. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that video. If you do have any questions, I do always leave my email address in the description of every video. But please like, comment, subscribe, share the video with anyone who you think might help them, or if you just gained a bit of understanding, a bit more of an understanding about JW life, then give the video a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. I upload videos every Wednesday and Sunday. I hope you'll come back for the next one, and I'll see you on my next one.